Hits one on Sirius XM. I am Mikey Piff, and I'm always so happy to catch up with my friend Halsey, who we haven't seen in. I think the last time we saw each other was our small stage series in Philly at Union Transfer in September of 22. So it's almost 2 years now.
I know a lot has changed. That was a really awesome show, though. I really look back fondly on that. I feel like that was like a really electric energy, and also it was a great interview that night too. I remember doing our little interview. It was a really good time.
It's always
Yeah,
fun when you're running. And yeah, that show was the crowd was amazing. The set was amazing. People still talk about it till this day.
it's definitely one of my favorites that I have done. I think like I just love playing to like more intimate venues at this point because it's like it's where I sort of cut my teeth, so I'm like really familiar with that kind of space, and I just love being able to like see people and connect with them, you know?
You're a grungy punk rock girl at heart. We know this. You know,
Listen, my time will come to do it again.
it'll happen. But I mean, like you said, I feel like every time we do something together, a show or there's a new album or something happening, then there's a chunk of time, and then something happens in that chunk of time. It's always something, and I will say, like from the literal bottom of my heart, is that I'm just so happy that I still get to talk to my friend because when I heard the end for the first time. I'm not gonna lie, I teared up and I immediately sent a text message. I'm like, "Is my friend okay? Can someone tell me something?" And then no one got back to me for hours. And then finally we're like, oh, wait, he's actually worried.
Yeah, that was like a really well, first of all, thank you. And I definitely got a lot of like Jersey mom guilt from everyone in my life when that happened because, I think that I kind of made the choice to keep what I was going through a little bit more private for a lot of reasons. Like, firstly, because I didn't want to worry people until I knew what was going on. And then by the time that I realized that there was actually something to worry about, I was so overwhelmed and I had never really experienced anything like it before. For the entirety of my career, I've always been someone who's been really forthcoming and really open about sort of my experiences and my struggles, even as they're happening, where I'm kind of working them out in front of the world or with the world. And this was new because I didn't really understand it or understand how I felt. And it felt really intimidating and it kind of knocked me off my feet a little bit. And that's why I started with the end. No pun intended. Started with the end. Pun fully intended, by the way. But I just felt like it was the most, honest, but also still optimistic reflection of how I was feeling at the time. And it is also the first song that I wrote when I started, when I turned to music as like the obvious answer of how to like cope with what I was feeling and what I was going through. But yeah, a lot of people I think were sort of surprised and were sort of like, what the heck? Like I saw you a couple months ago, or like I just talked to you, like I didn't know this was going on. And I was like, yeah, sorry. Well, now you know. It's kind of like that.
Yeah, I mean, well, listen, obviously you're entitled to how you want to do it's your life, right? So, I mean, the main thing that I would say is, and that I think is obvious, and not only listening to the end, but also listening to your new song "Lucky," is that not that you don't already know this, but we love you. You're surrounded by amazing, loving people from your team to your family to us. So you always have you're surrounded by love regardless of all the crap that's going on, good or bad.
I really appreciate that, and I think that that was like a real epiphany that I had while I was, going through the events of the past few years. Was like I feel like before I got sick, I focused a lot on people who didn't like me or people who weren't, showing up or supporting me. And I put a lot of energy into that. And then getting sick really sort of refined my focus to the people I did have in my life that were really supportive and, I could tell genuinely cared about me. And so it refocused me in that direction. And, that feeling has definitely maintained and has lasted where, I would say most of my energy now goes into gratitude and connection and really appreciating the people that I do have rather than grieving or mourning or complaining about the ones that I don't, I guess. So I really appreciate that. And I love you too.
Well, I mean, the day that you decide, you know what, we're gonna put Halsey on the shelf. I'm just gonna be Ashley. I'm gonna be a mom. I'm gonna be a daughter, whatever, a best friend. We'll still always have our Marvel movie marathons and comics and whatever you want to do that, outside of the art that you already do.
I could see a world where I don't really want to be as public as I am, but I definitely feel like another thing I learned is just like I really just love making stuff. You know what I mean? Like I love making stuff. Like I hope that I'm always making stuff, whether it's music or it's like or it's painting or it's writing or it's, other creative mediums and other formats. So I feel like even as things change, I hope that I always get to make stuff. It's just, the context of how I do it might change a little bit. And everything has changed so much, I feel like people maybe sometimes forget that I'm in my 20s for another few months, okay? I'm hanging on to that by a thread, just because I feel like I've been in the business for a pretty long time, for almost 12 years. And so everything has changed a lot. Everything's really different. And I'm different. And the industry is different and the world is different and the way we all engage with each other is so different that I just feel like it's a constant learning curve and a constant adjustment, and so we'll see where it takes me.
I mean, that's true, but I will say the constants, like you said, is that I don't think you'll ever stop creating. That's for sure. You're always going to be one of the strongest people I know. One of also the most headstrong people I know that I'm sure everyone knows. But as far as the art, I will say this is that every time people come visit and they at SiriusXM, we have these walls that people like used to sign. Whenever I show them like, oh, what do I do? I always show them like the stuff that you've drawn over the years. And they're always like, well, I can't match Halsey's art, but I'm going to try to sign the wall as cool as I can. But everyone is always amazed by your self portraits and stuff that you've drawn on the wall. And I always also, for like new people or people that kind of want to understand the context of the history of like just what happens on Hits One with how we start artists from like the beginning. I always show them the first time you created your autograph with the 17 on the H.
Yeah, my
Um,
very first one was on that wall in your studio.
Yeah, I show people that and they're amazed by that. And it's still there. So next time you come,
I
you
didn't
can.
even I didn't even have an autograph and I was just like on the spot. I was like, oh my gosh, how do I the H is the 17 because it's my favorite number. And I still sign like that to this day. It's so funny. I think that was also the first portrait that I did. It was in that office as well. And then that became an ongoing trend where I'm always doing the little doodles. And it's funny, the reason I did that was actually pretty relevant to, a part of Lucky of the song is I say in the bridge, I say, I thought I changed so much, no one will notice it. And that's part of why I do the self-portrait is because I always like to document what I looked like at that time, where I was in that place. And if I've been somewhere multiple times, like, in the Hits One, office, it's like you can see all these different portraits. Like my hair's long, my hair's short. Like I've drawn myself with a really dark, cool eyeliner, like a piercing. And then like the next time it's like, my hair's curly or it's red or it's like, so it's really cool to kind of document like, how I've evolved, I guess, and capture that little moment in time. So it's definitely become like a really cool trend that acknowledges the fact that I always look like a different person.
I don't know if you know this, but it's actually been 10 years of Halsey on Hits One.
I do know that because the Badlands 10-year anniversary is creeping up next year, and you guys were the first station to play Ghost, and that was my first song, and it was the start of everything for me. I could have never have dreamed that I would ever have music on the radio, much less have such a long history with music on the radio, and that was a really really incredible moment for me. And I think it really set the tone of everything for my career moving forward, where I was making music at the time that I think was really connecting with a lot of young people, especially young people in New York. And it was a little different than what was being played on the radio. And Mikey, when you took that chance and played the song and put it into the rotation at the station, I think that it really kind of changed the way people saw me as an artist. And they were like, oh, like this could be like a mainstream thing. And you knew that before even I did, because at the time I was still kind of like, yeah, I'll stay like a underground, like, cool, like indie, whatever. And then I was like, oh, I can I can do that and then still have my music reach, millions of people. That was like a really, really defining moment. I guess you could say I was born at Hits One.
Yeah. Well, the thing is now new artists come in and they reference you and starting on Hits One and those videos of you doing Ghost in our studio for the first time, covering
Yeah.
Katy Perry's birthday. Like they actually come in and be like, yeah, I watched the videos and the covers and stuff of what happened in here. And I remember Halsey being here for the first time. Somebody said that to me the other day. And I'm like, one, wow, that it's been 10 years. And two, that's a pretty awesome legacy for both of us to leave.
No, definitely. It's crazy. I mean, it's like I can't believe that we've known each other for so long. I can't believe I've been doing this for so long. I remember that day, it's my first time like performing sort of live on the radio in that context. This was my first time like, being Halsey in a radio station. And it was so I remember like my ears being hot and my heart beating fast and I was trying to be cool. And I remember I had no clothes because I was broke, like brokety broke. And I remember before, I visited, I remember I was just like running around scrambling, trying to find something to wear. And I found this like clearance leather jacket at like a Marshall's or a TJ Maxx or something like that. And I just picked it and I wore it. And then that became, a pretty recurrent costume piece for me from that moment forward. It was just like the plain white tee and the leather jacket. But it was so funny. I remember being like, oh my gosh, I need to look like I have it together. I have to look like I know what I'm doing. It was like a real fake it till you make it kind of situation, you know?
Yeah, I mean, people go. It's on YouTube. It's a whole little mini
I
documentary.
know.
But
I'm so
so,
young. It's so funny. I can't even believe it sometimes when I see those videos.
yeah, and don't worry. Whenever we post the photos, I get the text message threats. Don't use that picture, and it's so old. But it's. I mean, it really is a beautiful moment. But all right, so we have to talk about the new song. We waited long enough. There's so many people using kind of this fitting in the Y2K era right now. Why was this the right time? Do Lucky in this style of music because one could say this is the most different thing you've ever done comparatively to all the other Halsey music ever.
Yeah, I actually agree with you. It is really different for me. And I think that there's a couple of reasons why I wanted to do it. The first is that I was thinking a lot about just like my career and kind of the way that Ashley and Halsey have just blended into this one thing. And when I first, got sick and I started treatment, I was just thinking a lot about fate. And I just was thinking a lot about like, why am I here? Was it because I was doing the right thing at the right time in the right decade, in the right moment? Or is this just kind of like written in my code in the sense of like, if I debuted in 2003 or if I debuted in 1972, like would it have gone the same way? Like, is this my destiny in every other scenario? Because I was thinking a lot about getting sick, where I was like, well, what if I didn't do this? What if I didn't become Halsey? What if I didn't tour for 10 years straight? And like, would this have been in my code too? Like, would it have been inevitable that I ended up sick like this? I was just kind of thinking about like free will versus destiny. And I was thinking about all these, other possible scenarios where I was a musician at another moment in time. And I was thinking a lot about, the early 2000s because that was the age where I grew up and learned to love music. And those were the artists that were available to me. And obviously, the most impactful was Britney Spears. I was born in 1994, so I was 6 in 2000, and she was a absolutely life altering icon and influence and role model. Growing up, Britney was, she was just like the most impactful icon and influence on me. And I just, I found myself kind of like walking around singing Lucky, while I was going through treatment. And I was singing it pretty sarcastically, you know what I mean? It was kind of like an inside joke to myself where I was like, she's so lucky, she's a star, but she's sick. And I was like kind of doing like a parody of it or like, but then it really started to kind of touch my heart. And I was like, it became pretty obvious to me that I wanted to try the interpolation and was very nervous because I had to ask for her blessing. And I was just really hoping that she would be okay with it. And I was absolutely beyond thrilled when, ultimately she was like, yes. And she was so kind. And she was so nice. It was like a double moment for me because I was also like, oh my gosh, I'm like I'm interacting with like my favorite, biggest pop star ever of all time, but also like she's gonna let me do this song. And I wanted to maintain the original intention of the record because I wanted it to be almost like a song within a song. It's like my memory of that song, but combined with my now future reflections of what it means to me at this moment in my life. I wanted it to feel nostalgic, but also like it's two trains of thought happening at once. The first being, me being 6 and being like, wow, I don't know what's going on in her life. She's right. And having this sort of empathy and humanity for this pop star that's been positioned to me as having like this, this perfect life. That first moment of that sort of empathy versus, the things I know now that I can't unknow. I wanted those both to sort of come across in the record.
And
And I
now you
wanted to
kind of
have
know.
it. Yeah, I definitely know. I just also wanted to have fun with it. The song is definitely about like a really heavy time in my life, but if I learned anything in the past couple years, it's just not to take myself so seriously because life is too short.
Nothing really matters that much. Again, aside from the people around you and the people that you love.
Yeah, definitely.
I know
Definitely.
it sounds like an Instagram caption, but it's true.
No, it's really true. It is really true. And you know it, but you don't really know it until, you have an experience that sort of forces you to take inventory on your life and look at who you are. And I just feel like we all think we have so much time, right, to do the things we want to do or to become the person we want to become or change our legacy or the way that we're remembered. And the reality is that like, you never know what could happen. And now I wake up every day and I just kind of think to myself, if who I am in this moment, if this is the last chance I have, to write the story of how I'm remembered, would I be happy with it? Instead of being like, oh, I'll make this thing next year, or like I still have time to try this or do this, or like spend time with this person, or like I'll see them next year, or like, now I'm keenly aware of that. And I think that it's definitely changed my entire outlook on life and it's made me have a lot more fun, but also simultaneously take even more risks with my work and just make stuff that I like and stuff that makes me feel proud and good.
Is Lucky indicative of what we're going to get on whenever we get an album? Because, like I said before, this is so different from everything you've done before that I think we're all surprised and all really excited to see what you do with it.
I think that if you like Lucky, you're really gonna like a lot of stuff on the record. I think the one thing that's pretty like consistent across the board though is that all of the lyric on the record is confessional and honest. Well, before I started writing the album, ironically, I was like, gosh, what am I gonna write about? Like I feel like I don't have there's nothing sort of provoking me or triggering me or compelling me to like to write music. And then the universe was like, be careful what you wish for. And it handed me, this absolute curveball, speedball, knock me out kind of experience. And it became pretty obvious as soon as I started writing that this wasn't going to be an album where I could hide behind metaphor. I had to tell my truth, no matter how, painful or confusing that was to dig up and find. But, at the end of the day, I'm still Halsey. So you can definitely expect a lot of theatrics and, a lot of contradiction because that's how all of my records are. I feel like before I put out an album, everyone's like, what should we expect? And every time I'm always like, just expect the unexpected.
Fair. And lots of color.
Definitely lots of color. Yeah, lots and lots of color. And definitely lots of surprises. Lots of songs on this album where I'm like, I've always wanted to make a song like this. I can't believe I did it. I can't believe I pulled it off. Like a lot of songs on this album where I heard, hearing them back, like the completed demos, and just being like, I love hearing myself in this context. Like I love how I sound and I'm so proud and like it's really cool when you get to hear your own song and be like, whoa, I'm cool. Because you're so self-critical usually. It was like cool to hear myself back and be like, oh, I sound cool. Like that was like a really exciting moment and a confidence boost that I just like sincerely needed at that time.
Well, it's so nice to hear. I can hear the joy and your smile when you were talking about it. So we're just so happy to have you back. We always miss you. I always miss you, obviously. We love you.
Thank you. Hits one. Your